Hi everyone. Today I am finally getting around to doing the book recommendation tag, which I was tagged by Ed Kelly at books I'm not reading all the way back in April. I just had, so many writing and blogging commitments and such. I couldn't get around to some tag videos until now. And it was originally created by Steph Borer. I'll leave links to both of them down in the comments below. And now starting with number one, a book you tell people is your favorite. This is Damien by Hermann Hesse. I did several videos and blog posts about it in 2022 because that was marking the 60th death anniversary of Hermann Hesse, who has been my second favorite writer for several decades now. I just love him so much. I've read Damien 3 times now, all at, different decades in my life, and it just means so many different things to me. It's such a personal connection with the characters in the story, particularly the Mark of Cain. I just love his alternative reading that Cain was really the good guy in the Bible story. He was the one who questioned the status quo, and the Mark of Cain is really the mark of a nonconformist who's unafraid to go against the crowd, and Abel is this little conformist cookie cutter wuss who never, questioned anything. And just so many awesome things about this book. I do highly recommend it, and I cannot wait to read it again. Number 2, a book that is your guilty pleasure, the 5 Little Peppers series by Margaret Sidney, which was a pseudonym of Harriet Lothrop. She started publishing them around 1880, and I believe the last one, Phronsie Pepper, came out in 1905. Actually, I don't remember if I've mentioned this on my channel. I definitely have mentioned it numerous times on my blog. One of my hiatus works in progress, Justine Grown Up, is kind of like a modern retelling of sorts of Phronsie Pepper, only it's set in the 1980s, and Justine isn't nearly as infantilized as Phronsie is, but they're definitely of their time, very, very Victorian. You could get drunk if you make a drinking game of how many times there are exclamation points. These characters always deliver their lines, and they're like Polly screamed, Jasper shouted. Oh, and of course, because this is the late 19th, very early 20th century, they're constantly using the word ejaculate as a speaking verb, like, oh my goodness, ejaculated Mrs. Pepper. And it just kind of takes you out of the story, even knowing that was used as an exclamatory speaking verb back in the day. And it's number 3, a book everyone loved but you didn't. The freaking Book Thief. I hated that book so much. I have a previous video and based off of a blog post ripping that book apart. There are no words. I just hate it so much. I care less if some people have left angry comments on that blog post or downvoted my video. I really don't care. I don't go along with this hype, newsflash, this book sucks. There's so many horrible reasons I hated it. You can go and check out that prior video if you want. I just did not understand all the frickin' hype. It's just so stupid, goofy language, just giving away all the plot developments and so many spoilers. I didn't know foreshadowing now included outright giving away the ending and pivotal plot developments, and just the title makes no sense. And the Rudy has lemon colored hair. Did a dye job go wrong? Was he in a radioactive swamp back before radioactive material was really a common thing? Stereotyping nuns as ruler wielding, child beating sadists, and the vulgar German words that are tossed about, oh, cute, funny, sweet terms of endearment between romantic partners and friends and siblings. That would people who speak German have said that's basically the equivalent of one of George Carlin's 7 dirty words you can't say on television. You would not be tossing them around as a funny term of endearment between a mother and her daughter, or husband and wife. They would punch you in the face if you use such a disgusting, vulgar word. I do not understand the hype for this book at all. Number 4, a book you read the fastest. Several Hermann Hesse books. These include Siddhartha, which I have a prior video about, Roshalda, which is really, really one of my favorite of his books. It's kind of an underrated gem, basically the transitional novel before his big breakthrough. Damien, towards the end of his early period, but not quite at the the high level he started achieving with Damien. So it's basically the transitional novel between the two distinct phases of his development as a writer. And I would love to do some more, as I said, videos about his books. Journey to the East. That wasn't one of my favorites. I didn't really remember much of the plot at all, except the journey fell apart and the friendship between these guys was never really the same. I was kind of bored by it, but I did read. That was one of the books I read the fastest. I've read several of his books in all of one day, and now looking back, I kind of like regret that. I just wanted to, oh, I could read it fast because it's short, not necessarily because like I need to like power through it in one day. I should have taken more time to enjoy the journey of the book, but they are so like, short you can read them through in one day. But again, I would like, recommend taking more time to like savor it, particularly because he's like such a wonderful writer. He's one of the few writers, along with Dante, who has always felt like a dear friend when I'm reading his books. It's like, I'm back with a friend. Like, why was I away so long? It's just like a warm coat or like, pair of slippers or something. It's like coming home when I read one of Hermann Hesse's books. And Knalt, I also read that one in a day. That's definitely near the bottom. I think it's like just one up from the bottom. It was that boring. I really didn't like it at all. Nothing really happens. I only pretty much remember the end and the general concept. And again, Damien, one of the times I read that was in a single day. He's just absolutely wonderful, wonderful writer. I do have a whole playlist about Hermann Hesse. You guys can check it out if you would like to. Again, I couldn't recommend him more highly. Number 5, a book that deserves more hype. I would go with Out of This Furnace by Thomas Bell. And when I was sometime in my 20s, maybe like 25 or so, I want to say, like 24, I went back and finally read the book. It was really, really good. It's about like Slovakian immigrants to America, southwestern Pennsylvania, over 3 generations, and being exploited by like the capitalist overlords, being like, working in the coal mines so they could only shop in the company town stores. They were like abused horribly by the non-Slovaks like running the show in these areas. They weren't allowed to unionize until finally the 3rd generation. They're successful at the union and like getting our people out of this furnace. My only like real complaint about the book is it ended a little bit too soon before Dobie and Julie had their baby. I wanted to find out if it was a boy or a girl. Number 6, a book that is becoming a movie/TV show. Well, I went through and looked at things that are, becoming shows and films in recent years and such, but I just couldn't really recognize any of them. I don't read a lot of like modern literature. I know that's maybe a little bit snobby of me, but I'm just like more drawn to classics, and I don't really watch a lot of like modern TV shows or films anyway. So I went like super, super, super old school, back to the silent era, the original film adaptation of The 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. The original Spanish title is Los Cuatro Jinetes del Apocalipsis by Vicente Blasco Ibanez, who is Spain's great national novelist. This was a major international bestseller. It came out in 1919. The film was made in 1921. This gave Rudy Valentino, my favorite male actor of the silent era, his big break. Oh, I just love this film so much. And after reading the book, I saw the film first, but after reading the book, the film, it filled in so many blanks, and I appreciated and enjoyed the film even more, like knowing all these extra details, like filling out the plot. Number 7, a book you have reread the most. I would go with the books from my childhood and preteenhood. I definitely read them over and over again, although I wasn't keeping track. I've read a number of books as an adult as well, but not like nearly so many times as I did as a child, and particularly not like, oh, finish it, start it again, like read it 10 times in a row, like I did with, the Babysitter's Club or Lois Lenski's books or Carolyn Haywood's books. If you don't know, Lois Lenski, she wrote a lot. I think she wrote some other books as well, but her like primary oeuvre was historical fiction, particularly like children, like I guess upper level chapter books or like lower, sometimes, well, different spectrum of middle grade ages, and some like older chapter books for children about different historical eras, and not just historical fiction, different places in the U.S. For example, like early 20th century Florida, before the state really took off. It was basically just like swamps and farmland, or like Blue Ridge Billy, which is in the Blue Ridge Mountains, or how Christmas came to Blueberry Corners. A Strawberry Girl is the Florida book that really didn't hold up when I revisited as an adult. Like Texas, Ocean Mary, that was the longest book of hers I knew about. My friends couldn't believe I was reading that, because I read 4 or 5 grade levels up. I was ready for 300 plus pages, and they're still looking at 100-page books or something like that. And Indian captive about a real girl who was taken, I guess, captive, or she came into like, Native American like society, something like that. I'm forgetting all these titles off the top of my head, but I read her books so much. And Carolyn Haywood, she did a lot of series books too, like, and she did some one-offs. For example, Primrose Day, about a young British girl who comes to the U.S. to escape the Blitz in 1940, and she had the Betsy series. B is for Betsy, Betsy and Billy, Betsy and the Boys, Betsy's Star, who's her little sister, like Snowbound with Betsy. I think she had a few more books in that series. I just, read these books so many times. And as an adult, I would say the book I've probably read the most that I'm aware of is The Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I have a prior video on this, but it's on my list of videos to redo at some point, because I was just starting to make videos at that point, and I accidentally edited out a minute or so of footage because I didn't have iMovie yet, and I had to do it in the YouTube provided editor, and I accidentally like started and stopped at the wrong point and edited out a little bit too much. So I'm looking forward to redoing that video at some point. This book has never been out of my physical custody since I took it from my parents' shelves with permission at the age of 16 in January 1996. It's meant so much to me. It's been with me through so many hard times. I've quoted it and referenced it many times in pretty much all of my own books. I just could not highly recommend it, and I just love this one. The translation by Gia Fu Feng and Jane English. I've looked at some other translations, but this one just feels emotionally right because it's the one I know. But it is, I don't know if other ones are like this or this was just a fluke or something, but my personal version of this translation is missing chapters 66 and 67, so I finally had to look them up online. I printed them out at the computers at the Hillel House downstairs my senior year of university. This was sometime in the spring of 2002. I finally got to find out what they said, because they were only in the the original Chinese. And the thing, that's another thing I love about this book, it provides it in the ancient Chinese in this beautiful black and white photography. Number 8, a book from a genre you don't typically read. I went with Cop Hater by Ed McBain, which was a pseudonym of Evan Hunter. This is the first book in the 87th Precinct series, which is police procedural, which is in itself a subgenre of mystery. And that's, again, I don't read much mystery at all, let alone police procedural. That is just, who would associate me with reading that particular type of genre? It's just, not who I am at all. But I really ended up enjoying it. And this particular book, which kicks off the series, it stars the main character, Detective Steve Carella, who is investigating the murder of 3 cops in quick succession. And of course, he's really worried he's going to be next. And it's getting closer to him and his loved ones. Might he be too late? But obviously, of course, since he's the main character in all the books, he's not going to be killed himself. But, you have to find out how exactly he solves the case, how he gets out of being killed, how he thinks the police procedural isn't just solving a mystery. It's piecing it together with all this different evidence and tracking down bad guys. So it's a really interesting, different beast if you're just only familiar with traditional mysteries. But I really did enjoy this book. I would love to eventually read the others in this series. I really did enjoy it. Number 9, a book that deserves all the hype it gets. Do I really have to spell this one out? The Divine Comedy. I still have yet to do pick up with my bookshelf tour series and talking about my Dantean shelf, or at least this half of the shelf is all about Dante, and I have so many future Dantean videos planned. You guys can check out my video called All About Dante and the Divine Comedy. I love Dante and his magnum opus so much. It just means so much to me. There's Dantean references in all of my books I have written or edited since discovering his magnum opus. This year marked my 20th anniversary of finishing the book. I started it in late December 2003. I put it aside for a while because I was frustrated at the faux archaisms, the pretended Elizabethan English and all those footnotes constantly distracting me. So I had put it away for maybe a month or so, whatever, and then I came back and finished it sometime in the spring, March, April of 2004. It's just so meaningful, so personal to me. Everyone can relate to Dante's journey, sinking so low in life. You have no idea how you lost the way so badly with your life and your faith, just your faith, and just you find yourself in a dark forest, like the right path appears not anywhere, but like, sometimes you have to sink to the lowest, saddest point possible before you can begin like rising up through happier, like more beautiful, more peaceful places until you finally like emerge at the pinnacle of like all human beauty in your life. And then you can finally get back on track with your life and faith, because you've like gone through that like incredible life changing, like personal, like emotional, like mental, spiritual journey. And the poetry is so absolutely beautiful. It's timeless, even though Dante was very much a person like shaped by the Middle Ages, because of course like he lived then, like it had a huge influence on him. He also was like very much a modern person. You can see like so many like modern-esque sensibilities in his work. For example, the way he treats like women and like gay men, it's light years ahead of what the average like medieval guy would think about. Just like so much nuance, and he has sympathy with like victims of domestic violence. Like women are the ones who like sent him on this journey, and just so many things I just love about him so absolutely much. And I can't wait to get back to doing some more Dantean videos for you guys. Number 10. A book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. This one shouldn't be a surprise either. This is one of my absolute favoriteest books, The Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio. I first read it in, I guess, like December or so of 2002, I want to say, somewhere around that time. Shortly then, the year I had graduated from university. I read a really old translation from, I guess, the late 19th century. It had illustrations, but it wasn't so old. It refused to translate most of my favorite story, the 10th story of the third day. A lot of the really, really old school translations pretend, they were admitting like, it's too vulgar, we can't do this, the censors will get us. Or they rendered it in like French or the original Italian, saying, magic has fallen into disuse. They just didn't want to like talk or like do the whole story, which is like very, very sexual and very, very funny. I still haven't gotten around to doing a series on this book, but I really can't wait. I just need like some more, active subscribers, so I know I won't be like wasting my time doing all this research on and making and editing and videos and such, because this is going to be like 115 videos or more, so that's going to be a really, really huge time commitment. And I want to know I have like an active audience like who are going to be like watching and liking and participating in that. There's just so many wonderful funny stories in here. I know my favorites almost by heart. It's just like I laugh so much when I think about these stories. It's just like so many wonderful things. I just cannot wait to bring this series to you guys. Lucky number 11, a book that has your favorite characters. For this, I went with The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Ivanovich Bulgakov. This is a classic of Russian literature. This is like fairly early Soviet era. And for people who might be scared, it's a Russian novel, it's going to be like 800 pages and have 1,000 characters. It's, I think, like 400-ish or so pages, maybe even like 300-ish. It's been a while since I last read it. Like, avoid the Michael Glenny translation. He was a terrible, he was a garbage translator. I do not recommend any of his translations at all. Like, some of them he even basically admitted, or it was found out, he divided it up among his like Russian students in his like college classes to like translate as a group, as a class. That's a horrible translation. Just so many awful things I hate about his translations, but it's a really, really like funny book. It's like black magic, not necessarily like black magic, but just like magical stuff, like funny stuff is happening. The devil comes to Moscow in the 1930s, and it's like kind of like a spoof, like send up of the Soviet era, what was really happening. My favorite of these very funny characters is Behemoth. He's a black cat. He like is like shooting a Browning, and at one point there's all this like noise going on in the apartment or nearby, and one of the other characters is like, what's going on? What's all that noise? And the other guy's like, it's Behemoth, of course, damn him. And I would love to name a black cat Behemoth. I highly recommend this book to you guys. I probably should do a video about it as well. Number 12, a book you wish you could live in. For this one, I'm going with Forever Amber by Kathleen Winsor. I have a video about it from like 6 months ago or so, a full like discussion and review of the book. I absolutely love this book so much. It's a classic work of historical fiction and historical romance. It's like so rich and multi-layered. It's like Restoration era England. Everyone's having so much fun. The king came back to town. The monarchy is restored. King Charles II is the merry monarch. He has all these lavish parties at court. He's taking all these mistresses. Like, everyone is like such decadent living, and of course there's negative stuff in there too, like the Great Fire of London and the plague. But other than that, there's just so much like rich historical detail going on. And also, the 17th century, it seems kind of an overlooked era in a lot of historical fiction. And obviously, of course, like women didn't have so many rights, but like Amber, she takes what she can get and she like rises to the top as a woman can in that era, because like when you're determined, you can really, really succeed if you know how to work the system. And just like all these like grand like palaces and summer houses in the country, and just so many wonderful details, like acting on the stage. It's just like, oh, you could just dive into all these like rich historical details. This is what historical fiction should actually be about when it's at an actual length that works with historical. This book is a bit over 900 pages or so in its current print. The original version, which I read, the first printing, is 700 or so pages, because it's in 2 columns on thin pages to preserve paper for like wartime rationing. And the original book was like 5 times longer, and I could only imagine how much better the first draft was. I would just love to be able to read that one. It's just, I would just love to dive into that book. Lucky number 13, a book you thought you wouldn't hate but ended up loving. I'm going with Lockdown by the late Walter Dean Myers. I really, really got into his books. I didn't think I would, like them at all. I discovered him when I was taking a class in young adult literature at the master's degree level in autumn of 2011, and I pretty much had disliked almost all of the books I had read up to that point, except the graphic novels and the novels in verse, and maybe a few here and there. And I finally said really nice things about Lockdown because I ended up enjoying it so much. This is kind of in the YA contemporary, in a more like gritty urban setting, and I pulled up and copied and pasted the report, the review and such. I wrote about it, but for the sake of time, this is already getting up there. I'm just going to read the little book talk thing, which I did, which is like kind of like a succinct summary. You might be interested in this book if you're interested in books with boy characters and urban settings. It can be a bit frustrating to see your experience not reflected in many books, which is why representation, actual like good representation, really, really matters. But this is one book that showcases the lives of young people who come from poor neighborhoods and who got caught up in various things deemed criminal due to their circumstances. 14-year-old Reese has been sentenced to 38 months in juvenile hall for stealing prescription pads from a doctor's office and giving them to a dealer. He's trying to be good and better himself, but none of the adults he deals with have much faith in him. A friendship with an old war veteran at the senior center he's assigned work at slowly helps him see things in a different light. When he's later hit up with a new charge, which he insists he's innocent of, will he be able to convince the system that he's a changed person and that he's better than some of the other inmates? Number 14, a book that made you cry. For this one, I'm going with Exodus by Leon Uris. I first read it when I was 18, and then I reread it when I was 24. I pride myself on channeling the spirit of Buster Keaton, keeping an emotionless expression, the stone face. And I also mentioned in my Mental Health May video recently, I do tend to non-pathologically dissociate. Obviously, that's way too off topic to get into here, but so it was kind of a surprise. I cried so many times when I was rereading the book at 24. I'm obviously not going to give away any of those events that did it for me, because those would be major spoilers. But this is just such an emotional, powerful journey, particularly if you're Jewish, what our people went through to rebuild the state of Israel after being under foreign occupation for thousands of years, the Romans, various Muslim conquerors, Byzantines, the Ottomans, the British, and we went through so much struggle, Sturm und Drang to come back to the land. We never really left, but unfortunately most of us were sent into diaspora, and so people came back to work on the kibbutzim and build modern cities out of desert wasteland. They were abandoned by absentee Arab and Ottoman landlords, and just build it back up. And then even after we declared our independence and the British finally decided to go away and give us back our rightful indigenous homeland, all the neighboring Arab nations attacked us on the very day we declared our independence, and we had to immediately go to war and defend ourselves. And this is just right after the Shoah, and it just is such an emotional powerful journey. I highly recommend this book, and most of Mr. Uris's others, although I'm told his last book, and An Author in Ruins, its real name is A God in Ruins, but it's apparently so bad it should have been called An Author in Ruins. But most of his other books I highly recommend. Number 15, a book you wish you could read again for the first time. I'm going again with another Leon Uris book. This one is Trinity, which I read in the summer of 2004. I really, really enjoyed this book, but it took a while for me to get into, and I even put it aside for a while. I don't remember off the top of my head how long, because I picked the wrong time to read this book, and so I didn't really like it or start getting into it. At first, I had just read War and Peace over 19 days. To this day, I'm disappointed I didn't finish it off in 2 weeks or less. So maybe next time I'll be able to whip it down much quicker. And so I didn't give myself any time after ending that intense literary journey to just wind down, process my thoughts, just take stock, have a little bit of time to relax. Nope, I immediately began reading another really, really long epic novel with a big ensemble cast, and that was just a really big mistake. I hopefully will not do that again. Learn from your mistakes. It's the same reason you should never immediately start writing a new book, as soon as you finish the last book, particularly if it's a saga length book. You just need some time to regroup and relax and calm down. And so that just led me to not really getting into Trinity the way I should have in the beginning. It was just kind of passing me over. And so I would definitely love to go back and do that properly again. And I forgot to mention, Trinity is about Irish history from the 1840s until about 1916. So it basically goes through the whole epic scope of Irish history and how they suffered under British occupation and colonialism. But one of the things I would say that was negative, not accurate about this book, what are the odds Irish people would have had Irish names during this period of British occupation? Because the British colonialism was so overpowering. Most Irish people did not have Irish names. He kind of gets names wrong in a few other books too, but obviously that's a whole thing for another post. Thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. Please leave me a comment letting me know, have you guys read any of the books I mentioned, or have you heard of them, or would you like to read them? What did you think of them? I really enjoy having conversations with you guys, and I particularly really do like seeing comments because I have such a microscopically tiny channel and don't get comments on all of my videos. So I really like to hopefully make more friends on BookTube and AuthorTube eventually. And so if you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. I will see you guys again very soon. Thanks. Bye.